Let's get Jeremy in Portsmouth on the line. Jeremy, where do you want to start with President Trump's total lack of historical knowledge and perspective on these events? Good morning.
Well, hi, Nick. Like most veterans, I'm appalled by the statement. For the record, there were 3 Victoria Crosses awarded to British forces in Afghanistan, 2 of them posthumously. The 3rd was awarded to Joshua Leakey, who was in a joint American-British patrol. Joshua Leakey ran down a hill under fire and carried an American captain on his shoulders to safety in that action. I just think it's Trump grandstanding. He's got the publicity he wanted, even though it's adverse publicity. That doesn't worry him. He's a media man. He wants publicity, which he's got.
And the families, lastly, Jeremy, how do you imagine the families feel or felt when they heard or saw this news yesterday?
Appalling. I mean, they lost their loved ones, 457. How can you reconcile that when Trump stands up and said we weren't in the front line?
Thank you for your call, thank you for your service, and thank you for pointing out in such graphic detail the bravery of those particular soldiers. Jeremy, thanks. I remind you of those numbers. 457 British military personnel and some civilians were never to return from Afghanistan. 616 did, with injuries, some of which are life-changing, life-altering.
John is in Glasgow. John, what would you like to say?
I phoned up to initially tell about, obviously, Josh Leakey, VC. Yeah. He was a friend. I've not seen him in years. I hope he would still be a friend. It would be great if you could read out his citation.
OK. Shall I do it now?
Yeah, I'll let you evaluate it.
No, you don't need to. I actually had it in front of me, John, by coincidence. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's the citation, but I've got what he said, and then I've got the description of what happened. When you hear there's a man down, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Clearly, then your plans change. Realising the seriousness of the situation and with complete disregard for his own safety, he dashed across a large area of barren hillside, being raked with machine gun fire. As he crested the hill, the full severity of the situation became apparent. Approximately 20 enemy had surrounded 2 friendly machine gun teams and a mortar section, rendering their critical fire support ineffective. Under fire, yet undeterred by the very clear and present danger, Lance Corporal Leakey ran across the exposed slope of the hill 3 times to initiate casualty evacuation, re-sight machine guns and return fire. His actions proved the turning point, inspiring his comrades to fight back with renewed ferocity, displaying gritty leadership well above that expected of his rank. Lance Corporal Leakey's actions single-handedly regained the initiative and prevented considerable loss of life. And it was the United States Marine Corps who were holding the positions that he evacuated the casualties from. Or, to paraphrase the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, he held back from the front line, John.
I want to also say that Josh didn't do his actions thinking that he would be awarded the highest honour. He did it for, the overarching good, the right thing to do. I joined in 2001 and was part of the invasion in 2003. I was unfortunately medically discharged in 2017 for complex PTSD. Everything just caught up with me.
Of course, I'm sorry.
That's not your fault. We can't go back and change things. I don't know. I'm really angry. Sorry.
Don't apologise.
Trump is a war dodger and he is in no position to comment on anybody's bravery. He's a coward. And when I watched the media, I think he feels like he's part of these operations that have happened recently. It increases his masculinity as a leader.
The psychological makeup of the man is something we could probably going to spend the rest of our lives trying to unravel. But I can't quite, and I don't even know if it's appropriate to invite you to try. But how could he get such a hideously wrong idea about recent history and very well recorded history?
I think the lack of him actually being interested in it, his team around him. I just wanted to bring up the other points I raised here, researcher, and that.
Yeah, go on.
in Helmand, the Americans couldn't get onto the ground without British soldiers being there. So they were stuck behind their fences or whatever, razor wire, and it had to take British troops being part of their operation to get them to get into combat. And this is quite like I would say a heartwarming story. In my last tour of Afghanistan, my mum used to send out like caramel shortbread.
Yeah.
And the Americans, there's only a few of them, loved it. And that was like, it became like a barter sort of trade situation. I would trade for, it was a brand called Rip It, high caffeine drinks, and also clothing, and they would take most of the caramel shortbread. And that's what the relationship was like. It was a brotherhood, you know, like for the greater cause. I can't, like, we had like similar values, you know, like what people will think of Afghanistan in the future, I can't predict. But being in it, like, and not being political, it was like there was just a connection. Like,
yeah, and it's interesting. That's two veterans now that I've spoken to who have gone on to the question that I was really thinking about at 10 o'clock this morning, and the question of what the alliance is about, what the actual relationship is all about, what marching, fighting under the same flag, as it were, a NATO flag, as it were, was about, because that's something the rest of us never really think about, never really know about, and it makes what Trump has said and what Trump has done even more offensive, even more obnoxious. My
personal opinion is that the UK needs to completely cut ties with America and not be reliant on them, and with Europe recreate the infrastructure needed to replace what American sometimes provided for us.
And we've been talking about that since Putin went into Ukraine, actually, and or at least since Trump got back into the White House, and it became clear that his commitment to Ukraine was at the very least questionable, although, of course, yesterday, and we may get onto this later in the programme, Volodymyr Zelensky was very, very critical about the role that Europe is currently playing in the support for Ukraine, which I think is probably evidentially true, but it's going to reach some ears very uncomfortably on this side of the Atlantic, on this side of Europe. John, thank you. It's quite an American thing to do and to say, but I think on days like today, it's probably appropriate for me also to say thank you for your service and look after yourself. But the ignorance, the actual ignorance in the purest sense of the word, the ignorance of just not knowing stuff, let alone the ignorance in the broader sense of the word of insulting our war dead, but the ignorance of not knowing stuff. And the case of Lance Corporal Joshua Leakey being absolutely front and centre in response to the claim that NATO allies didn't do much and held back from the front line during that 20-year deployment in Afghanistan that was undertaken only as a consequence of our NATO membership and the United States being the only member ever to trigger Article 5, by which everybody is required to respond.
Scott's in West Hampstead. Scott, your reaction to when you heard or saw those comments. Morning.
Hi, Nick. This is a new low from President Trump. I mean, I don't dislike President Trump. I think he's done a lot of good things. But really, my late father was a Royal Navy D-Day veteran, and in fact, his job on the 6th of June, on D-Day, was clearing mines. He was on a minesweeper at the front of the Armada ships, clearing mines off Omaha Beach, where a lot of American servicemen were killed. Yep. And he'd be turning in his grave if he could hear what Trump had said. It's absolutely despicable. And I really feel for all of the families, who lost their sons, daughters' sons, their relatives in Afghanistan. I mean, I think it's absolutely hideous.
Can I ask you this, Scott, as someone, and I'm with you, and I think as I said yesterday, trying to apply rational thought processes to President Trump will just send you round the bend. It's not possible. And I know that you said you support some of what he did, but as a result of what he said about military personnel, has he lost some esteem in your view? Has it taken some of the shine off Trump?
It certainly has, and I've had a fallout, and I've spoken on the radio about this over the last week or two. I've had a fallout with my eldest brother, who's in Alabama in the States, and he was a great supporter of Trump, certainly during his first term. And we've had an exchange of emails, and I actually said something I shouldn't have said to him. In an email, I said Trump ought to be in jail rather than in the White House.
Right, and your brother took against you on that, did he?
We're no longer communicating.
Oh, no.
Well, it's not the end of the world.
It's not the Beckhams, is it? We haven't got a Brooklyn Victoria Beckham on our hands here, have we, Scott?
Well, I hope not.
So do I. All right, maybe extend the hand of peace on the weekend or something. Or maybe look for a significant moment like your brother's birthday or something like that. Scott, have a good weekend. Thanks for sharing so much.
457 British personnel, including members of the military, that died during a 20-year deployment in Afghanistan, but according to Donald Trump, didn't really go near the front line, held back a bit and didn't really help. Aiden's in Royston in Hertfordshire. How do we process this, Aiden? How do you?
It's very difficult, James, but the reason I phoned is I wanted to remind people, let people know that there's a Lance Corporal Josh Leakey won the Victoria Cross for rescuing casualties, not once but 3 times, under fire, and never guessed what nationality those casualties were.
Well, I think we don't need to guess, do we?
Yeah, so I just said to your researcher, So I just said to your researcher that what I would really, really like is for a very senior military official in America to stand up, have the courage to say to him, to Trump, you are wrong, wrong, wrong. You know, and let's see if it happens or not. But, yeah, I feel for the families.
It is. I don't want to get my words wrong, but I'm so grateful for your obvious emotion this morning because of what we were talking about a moment ago. It happens so often, and there's so much that we can easily lose the ability to respond as powerfully as we should to something as hideous as this. And you are really responding powerfully today, aren't you?
Yeah. It's, as I said to your researcher, I was actually serving in Macedonia with American forces when 9/11 happened, and we were in this warehouse and we were watching TV as it happened. And obviously they were devastated. They were just, and we really felt for them. And I remember saying to them, don't worry, whatever happens, we will be there for you. However this turns out, the British Army, the British forces, we will support you.
I'm interested in that. We've also got Johnson Bahari, haven't we? Another Victoria Cross who was in Afghanistan. But you're right that Joshua Leakey's courage and bravery was very specifically in the service of rescuing American Marines. And Donald Trump says that they didn't go near the front line. I mean, what do you do now? If you want your head almost explodes. And we'll move on later, I think. And thanks for teeing it up to that question of what the NATO relationship means to military men like you. Can I tell you a little story, which hopefully will put a smile on your face? A pal of mine has been reminiscing this morning about visiting SeaWorld in Orlando in about 2013. And the announcer at one of the shows asked all the veterans in the audience to stand up. And there was a big round of applause, as you'd expect. And then the same announcer asked all the veterans from America's allies to stand up. And according to my pal Gabriel, the applause was even louder. And he said that was rather moving. So it's important to remember that Donald Trump does not speak for the United States Army, the United States military, or the people of the United States when he says these disgusting things.
No, absolutely. And there will be people in America will be absolutely horrified. I mean, it just, sorry, I'm just going to disappear down a rabbit hole. It's just my own personal opinion. But after that dreadful incident in Minnesota, that's the day that Donald, he jumped off a cliff. I know it's a very, very, very long way down, but he jumped off a cliff that day.
Possibly, whatever we call it, a pendulum moment or the beginning of the end. I don't know, though, because, of course, plenty of people were still cheering him to the rafters after Renee Nicole Good was shot in the face by an entirely threatened and unendangered member of ICE, the same organisation that was capturing 5-year-old children from Front Drive earlier this week and taking away the parent who would be absent when his older brother returned home. Terrible things are happening outside. I hope you're right. I hope that was the beginning of the end, but Dick Littlejohn was still writing love letters to Donald Trump after that happened. But I'm sure he hasn't today, so we'll turn to that column shortly and find out just how, because he's got a great way with words. That's why the Daily Mail pay him so much. We can find out just how much fury he has brought to bear on this hideous insult, not just to Joshua Leakey, but to Aiden and to everybody who's ever served, especially under a NATO mission.
Dave, in Horsham, the point you want to make. Good morning.
Oh, yes, good morning. No, I'm afraid I don't know much about his draft dodging, but I had to phone in because I was almost speechless with anger. I am not ex-military.
Right.
But the things that he said are so disgusting that, I mean, can you imagine how the families of the veterans and those who were killed and seriously injured and who are still walking around with, false legs and false arms and all that sort of thing, can you imagine how they feel? But what really angers me, Nick, and really angers me, is where is Starmer? Can you imagine if Thatcher was Prime Minister, what she would be saying to President Trump?
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Starmer should have been right on it, the same as the Secretary General. He should have been right on it and said, enough is enough. I've done enough snivelling, enough grovelling, but you crossed the line now. So, mate, I'm almost speechless with anger.
You wanted to see more from our Prime Minister, not least for all the military personnel who served. Dave, thank you. You got your point across brilliantly. I have looked it up. Donald Trump received multiple deferments that allowed him to avoid the Vietnam War draft, primarily for attending college. I was right, here we are. And a final one for bone spurs in his feet. I knew there was something, but I couldn't remember what. This kept him from being eligible for service until the draft ended. His medical exemption came before the lottery began, contradicting claims he made that he had a high draft number was the main reason. Remember, they worked their way through the draft. So that is just to get the right legality on that. 7:42.
Anne is in Cambridge. Anne, what made you pick up the phone?
I was just on my way back from a yin yoga class and I heard you mention the word trauma. And I am traumatised. I am an ex-military mum. My son was in the Royal Marines. He did 3 tours of Afghanistan before his 19th birthday. His first tour was in Sangin, operating from a patrol base and a FOB, a forward operating base. So not at all on the front line.
Holding back from the front line, Anne, I think is the phrase we use today.
Yeah, he didn't hold back from the front line. When he had the opportunity to phone me, they used the satellite phone, but when there was a death, they used to go on to what they called minimised. So there was no contact. So so that they could inform the families. And I never knew whether it was going to be me, whether they were going to be waiting outside my door.
Oh, my days.
So when he could phone me, I had to pay. I think they got so many minutes on the satellite phone free. And but I paid extra so that he could speak to me and his girlfriend when he was able to. And he used to say things to me like, "Did you hear that, Mum?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" Well, he didn't tell me, but he told his stepdad that it was a bullet going past his head. Not at all on the front line.
Wow.
He then, when he came home, he then did 2 further tours of Afghanistan with SB, special boat, special services, and I didn't even have a clue where he is. And at one point I asked him where he was. He said, "You can't expect me to answer that." Things like I used to go and visit my parents, just to reassure his grandparents that he was okay. And before I even went to see my parents, I had to tell his company, his unit, where I was in case he was killed.
Because they would have to be able to find you to tell you?
Yes.
So it's a constant. I don't think that those of us on Civvy Street fully appreciate that constant nature of fear. It's it's ever present.
And as I was a teacher, and I'm retired now, and every time we did a, Remembrance Day assembly, I couldn't go into the assembly because I was just so traumatised by the whole remembrance thing. I also taught English literature, and one of the poems we had to teach was Poppies, and my colleagues wouldn't let me teach it. They had to teach my lessons because of the trauma that all brought back to me.
And it's the only word to use.
I am traumatised.
Of course you're I said trauma is the only word to use, isn't it?
I am. I am traumatised today. I am very much traumatised. This whole thing has triggered me to an extent that I'm quite shocked about.
Because you, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but because you can just about process what you went through with the knowledge of what a noble thing your boy was doing.
Yes.
And to have the Commander-in-Chief of the United States say it wasn't noble at all is absolutely... I mean, I don't know what word to use to describe it.
Well, no, I'm not even insulted. I've always thought that Trumpy wasn't a sentient being. I've always sort of worked that one out. But now I've upgraded my assessment of him from absolute lunatic to an unprintable, I can't say it on the radio.
No, don't. I mean, well, you can if you want, but it'll be me. It'll be me that gets into trouble with Ofcom, not you. Although we know that Keith's very good at hitting the correct button. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that you're going through this today, and I hesitate to say this, but I could you imagine what it would be like for a mum whose son didn't come back?
Well, no, I can't because it's just I can't. And if I feel insulted, those women, those girlfriends, those sisters, those wives, what he has done to them is it's not even inexcusable. And it will be really interesting when the King goes to visit on their state visit in April, because his son served in Afghanistan as well. And there is actually film of Harry leaving an interview to go and join his unit because they were under attack.
There is. I've watched it a few times, and I often think of it when I see the kicking that he's getting from members of the British media that have never been near a front line in their life, and never been near a war zone in their life, and yet they're sitting in judgment of his courage and integrity on an almost daily basis. And you don't have to answer this, and I'm not sure I should even ask, but how is your son? Is he all right?
Oh, he's fine.
Oh, good.
I mean, the point is, he was Royal Marine, the King's Badgeman.
Wow.
So, he was pretty good at what he did. He won the Young Navy Sports Personality of the Year. He's an exemplary young man. I never fail to feel so proud of my son. And now he's a critical care nurse working in the NHS.
Bloody hell, you must have done something right.
I know. All right? So, so the draft dodger with three sons who have done absolutely nothing with their lives except hang on the biggest example of NATO babies in the world. Yeah. And tells me that my son didn't do his bit, and he is still doing his bit.
I mean, it's not for you and me now. It's certainly not for you to worry about such things. But where on earth would that come from? It's so unnecessary to say. Yeah. He can talk about, he can be critical of NATO, albeit that it's a Kremlin talking point to be critical of NATO. He can, we know he never does anything that a Kremlin place wouldn't do in the White House. If Vladimir Putin had personally selected a president, he couldn't have done anything different from what Donald Trump has done. But why would he say that about NATO allies, about actual troops, about your son, Anne?
Well, I know. Well, as I say, he's gone, he's not even a sentient being, we know that, but now he's proved it. He's just, I've got a dear, beloved aunt who's 85 and has got Alzheimer's, and she makes more sense than he does.
I can't believe you made me laugh at the end of this. You almost made me cry 2 minutes ago. Yeah. Absolutely extraordinary. Anne, thank you. Are you all right? Is there anything else you want to say?
I'm all right. I've just done my yin yoga class, and now
we've undone all that, haven't we, in the space of a single radio programme? Maybe you need to go back for a top-up.
No, I'm going to put a bottle of wine in the fridge. It's not too early, is it?
No, it's not too early to pop it in the fridge, Anne, although, I think sometimes Friday evening can't come around soon enough. Thank you so much.